Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden, but we're going to head a little bit north for this one, and we're returning to a brewery that has featured on the channel a good number of times before. I've had some very interesting beers from these guys over the years. They're not afraid to try different styles, which I think is great, and they brew on a very small scale, so in my opinion their beers come across as being, you know, a little bit raw and almost still kind of homebrewed in a sense, and I think that's one of the reasons I really enjoy the stuff that I've had from them. So for this one we are going to try a style that I've not had from them before, but it is a style that I feel is quite underappreciated, and it's one that I've enjoyed since my early days of craft beer drinking actually. So I'm really curious to see how these guys pull this one off. So for this review then we are going to go to Eskilstuna, out to the west of Stockholm once again, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Möllys Kvarterbryggeri, or Möllys Brewery as they're sometimes known. So this one is called the Möllys Brown Affi Sugar. It comes in at 10% ABV, and this one is an Imperial brown ale, and apparently it has a little bit of coffee and maple syrup added into the brew. So yeah, very curious to see what this beer has in store for us. As I said to you a minute ago, I really enjoy the Imperial brown ales. My love of brown ales began with the Brooklyn Brown. I really like that one. And then one of the other beers I think that's really notable in this category would be the Kamasutra from a beer here on Bornholm, the little island, the little Danish island in the middle of the Baltic Sea. That is one of the best Imperial browns that I've come across actually. But this is a style that you really do not see very much of anymore, so if you guys are watching and you're interested in Imperial brown ales, then please let me know a few examples that you guys think I should review in the comment section below. It's always great to get some advice from you guys when it comes to trying different styles and different particular examples of styles and things like this. So yeah, as I said, very curious to see how Möllys Kvarterbryggeri do an Imperial brown ale. The last beer I had from these guys was the Lemonade, which was a really quirky but very nice sour. I really enjoyed that. I've had great beers from these guys over the last years, and the first one that I ever tried from these guys was the Dubel La Bomba, which was an Imperial coffee stout. So we know that these guys can do beers that have coffee added into them as well. So yeah, this is definitely one that piques my curiosities from a few different perspectives. So like I said earlier, hopefully this is another good beer from Möllys Kvarterbryggeri, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, special shout out in this video to Rikard from Över at Glas as well. He joined me on one of my recent live streams. He actually lives very close to this brewery. I think it is actually in Eskilstuna that he lives. He's very close to these guys. So do make sure you check out Rikard's channel. I'll try to remember to put the link to that in the video description below, but he really enjoys the Möllys Kvarterbryggeri beers as well from what he tells me. So yeah, big shout out to Rikard, and you will see more of him on my channel at some points over the future actually. But yeah, in the meantime, let's see how we get on with this beer then. The Möllys Brown Affi Sugar 10% Imperial brown ale. Very curious about this. So yeah, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Möllys Kvarterbryggeri before, and you will no doubt see more from these guys in the fairly near future, because I do keep an eye out for what they're doing. There's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the home page and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Möllys Brewery, or Möllys Kvarterbryggeri then. So on to my brewery notes. So as I've mentioned to you already, Möllys Brewery is based in Eskilstuna, out to the west of Stockholm, and the company was founded back in 2015 by Daniel Herdigen, who is half German and half Swedish. Apparently his father's German family can trace their brewing roots back to the 18th century, and they come from Erlangen, just outside of Nuremberg, and that is in the northern part of Bavaria. That's a region called Franconia, and there you have the highest density of breweries per head of the population anywhere in the world, Bamberg is the town that you really want to visit there. There's some awesome stuff there, including the Bamberg Rauch beers, which is where my whole love of craft beer began. I would love to see these guys do a proper Rauch beer, actually, like a Rauch Doppelbock or something like that. That would be awesome to try from these guys. But Daniel, of course, as a result of his German heritage, spent a lot of time there, but he was actually born when the family were living in Sweden, and he started off home brewing, learning from his family members, of course, and then just doing it himself. But he soon expanded to a 500 litre brew kit, and in 2019 he produced around 25,000 litres. A little bit earlier than that, though, in 2018 they produced a beer for Messiah Markelin's 50th birthday called Doom Warrior. I believe that one's an Imperial Black IPA, and Messiah Markelin, for those of you who don't know, is the kind of classic lead singer of the Swedish doom metal band Candlemass. I really like them, actually. Quite jealous that Daniel got to meet Messiah Markelin, actually. But he also produced a beer called Tompe for a friend that he used to go to all these metal festivals with, and this was when his child was sick with cancer. So yeah, I reviewed Tompe. That was maybe 3 or 4 Möllys reviews ago that I reviewed that, and again, that was a very nice beer. That one was an Imperial stout of some description, if I remember rightly. But yeah, the artwork on these beers, of course, is very distinctive. It's Daniel's brother Bjorn that does them all, and they're kind of hand drawn. And again, I think this kind of sort of hand drawn, almost raw style of artwork that Bjorn has suits the kind of vibe of these beers. As I say, for me, the Möllys beers they're brewed on such a small scale that you still get that element of home-brewed kind of rawness in the flavour, actually. They don't come across as being madly refined in the way that some of the kind of larger brewed craft beers can. But yeah, as of November 2020, when I'm reviewing this beer for you, these guys have produced around 50 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, but as far as I can figure, this one is the first Imperial Brown Ale that they've produced, I think. But no doubt Daniel will be on and correct me on that if I'm wrong. But yeah, this is my 9th review from them, like I said, so I've reviewed nearly 20% of their beers. That is pretty impressive, actually, if it's 50 beers they've produced. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Möllys Kvarterbryggeri for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can, of course, check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's have a little look at this one then and see how we get on. So yeah, this one I think will be pretty awesome. As you can see, the artwork on this is pretty similar compared to what we've had from Möllys Brewery before. There you can see the classic sort of owl drawing of Björn's. I'm not sure what the reason for the owl is on it, but when we do a Meet the Brewery segment with Möllys, which Daniel has agreed to do, he said he's going to show me around the brewery and things, so we will do a Meet the Brewery with him at some point. We will need to ask him about that, why it's owls that they use on the theme there. There you can see the maple syrup, which looks very good. But yeah, nicely presented beer, this one once again, and we're going to talk about Pedron in a minute. So it tells you a little bit about the beer on the side here. So yeah, it says en sötslig Imperial Brown Ale med injection av både lönsirap och Pedron kaffe, barista-hoppen. So yeah, basically it's saying a sweet and slick Imperial Brown Ale with an injection of both maple syrup and Pedron coffee from the barista shop. This one is soft, stark and crafty. Kraftfullt, I believe that is, just flavoured, like fully flavoured, if you like. But yeah, it says serve at 12 degrees. I think this one must be about 10 or so just now, so it is a little bit cooler than we should normally, than it's recommending that we serve it, but I'm sure it will be fine, actually. So yeah, this one is a 330ml can. And I don't know what I paid for this, actually. I must have paid about 35 or 40 crowns, something like this, for it. But yeah, without further ado, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting. So like I said, a 10% Imperial Brown Ale with a little bit of coffee and some maple syrup added into the brew. So yeah, let's get this guy out then and we will get on with the tasting. That does look very, very nice. So as I've told you before in other reviews, I absolutely love coffee beans as an adjunct in beers. I've not had too many coffee brown ales. I think this could even be the first one, I honestly don't know. That's the thing, when you've done 2,500 reviews, you are going to forget a few of them. Yeah, coffee beans, they're such an interesting adjunct because they add so much depth to the, they can add so much depth to the beer. Just before it fades away though, we can see we had about a quarter finger of a frothy kind of medium sort of mocha coloured head on that, and that is just, as you can see, fading away to leave a nice foamy ring around the edge of the glass and a very thin wispy layer. But yeah, as I was saying, when it comes to coffee beans, they can add such a level of depth to your beer. You know, with coffee beans, where they're grown in the world obviously affects them because of their mineral contents in the soil and the water. You've got the different varieties of beans as well, and then of course you have the factor of the maso, the metres above sea level. Apparently, the higher the altitude you grow the coffee at, the more kind of aromatic and fruity flavours you get out of it actually. So I'm really curious to see how this Padron coffee comes out as well. Actually, that one, I think, am I remembering right that that is a Colombian coffee? I think it might well be, but yeah, it should be really interesting. But you know, we commented on the head on this one, like I said, about a quarter finger of a frothy, quite bright mocha coloured head. That's faded away just to be pretty much nothing now, but as you can see with this beer, it actually looks very much like just like an Imperial Stout or something. If we shine the light through this one, you can actually see that the beer has a very dark sort of chestnutty. It's got a really, really dark chestnutty colour to it, in fairness. It's not as dark as some of the Imperial Stouts you'll come across from these guys, such as the Double La Bomba that I mentioned earlier. It does almost have a very kind of dark ruby tint to it as well, so a really dark chestnutty ruby tint to the beer actually. So I really like how the colour of this one comes off. I mean, it comes across very, very nicely. So the thing with these kind of beers, of course, with these big 10%ers, the thing that's going to affect the colour of your beer is, one, the type of malts that you use, and two, the length of the boil. I would guess that when this is an Imperial Brown Ale at 10%, this one's got to have had at least, you know, probably a 5-hour boil or something like that. When you sugar the beer up, you can see the lacing on the glass there, you can see the oiliness of this beer and the thickness of it. What happens when you extend the boil is that it caramelises the sugars, and that's what gives you a slightly darker colour to the beer progressively as you do it more and more. And at 10%, this thing is a bit of a monster. Could this be the strongest beer I've had from Möllys so far? It's got to be one of them, but I've got a feeling there's been one or a couple of them have been, you know, about 11% or something like that. But yeah, as an Imperial Brown Ale, it certainly looks the part. I think this is maybe one of the darker examples of this style that I've come across in terms of colour. But yeah, certainly looks the part. Let's take a closer look at the aroma and just see how we get on with this one. Ooh, that does come across really nicely. Yeah, straight away with this one, I'm going to say straight away, I think that this, I've got a feeling I've had a beer from Möllys before that has this same coffee bean in it, because there's just something oddly familiar about this. But straight away with this one, you've got a really interesting combination of things there. You can smell like the slickness of the brown sugar underneath it, and that's going to be the maple syrup that's in here. You know, maple syrup and molasses always gives you a bit of slickness to the beer. You can really smell it. It's almost just like a sheet of brown sugar underneath. But yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit later. Let's focus on the coffee beans for the moment, because the coffee beans are the things that really jump out at you in this beer. So for me, the coffee notes that come off of this one, it's got a really smooth roast to it. It's got a really nice smooth kind of earthy roast in there. You've got a good little bit of a red kind of berryish fruity sort of thing to it. It's almost got a wee bit of a kind of blackcurranty sort of thing, but it's got a wee bit of that almost phenol, medicinally, Cavonia type thing coming off it as well. So the coffee beans are really interesting. Nice smooth earthiness, a really nice roast to it, a little bit, you know, really quite red and fruity if you like, red kind of blackcurranty type fruits coming off this one. That's a really interesting note to take from the coffee, I have to say. But in fairness, the fruity notes out of this might be coming from some of the other aspects of the malt. I think the higher alcohol beers that I've had from Möllys, quite a few of them do have just a little hint of that sort of phenolic type thing, and you do get a little bit of that out of this beer for sure. So yeah, it's a very, very nice smelling beer, this though. But underneath the coffee, you definitely get a nice bit of a kind of big brown bready sort of thing. There's a bit of a toasty bread crust in there, but I think that the whole coffee thing really just smoothens out the whole beer. There's some really highly caramelised brown sugars in here, you know, the sort of treacle molasses sort of thing, and you've got a little bit of that maple syrupy quality that comes out of this one as well. So yeah, I really like how the aroma and the malty side of this beer goes together. You might get a few nutty and woody elements coming out of it, but I would say the coffee really, I think the coffee sort of dominates the kind of malty adjuncty side of this one, but you get some really nice, you really get a nice kind of smoothness out of this from the kind of maple syrup and things and the brown sugars that's underneath there, and you also get a wee bit of the breadiness, like I said. So yeah, the aroma that comes out of the malty side of this beer is very nice. A few woody and nutty undertones underneath, like I said, but yeah, it really smells like a kind of just a big coffee beer, but it doesn't quite have some of the roasty and toasty notes that you would expect of an Imperial Stout. I think it's that slightly more kind of brown bready smoothness and slickness that the beer has that defines it as a brown ale, actually. Yeah, so I think that covers the malty side of the beer in quite good detail. So let's look at the hops and the fruits before we taste it. So yeah, on the hoppy side of things, there's definitely a nice little bit of earthiness there. It's not a very harsh earthiness, I have to say, just quite a smooth earthiness. Some nice floral aromaticity, good little bit of a lighter kind of grassiness in there as well. But yeah, the hoppy side of things, I'd say wee bit herbal, wee bit earthy, then just a little bit of a lighter sort of grassiness in there. I do wonder if this might be Northern Brewer that's in this, the German hop, because the earthiness comes across nice and smoothly, and the grassiness does as well. So I do wonder if there's a bit of Northern Brewer in here. The other option might be Summit. So let's look at that fruity side of things. Yeah. So yeah, fruity side of things, it's got a good little bit of a kind of juicy blackcurranty note to it. There is a wee bit of that oily, more kind of blackberry note. Few figgy notes, a little bit of that kind of phenolic, medicinal kind of thing. So yeah, a few bits of plums and a little bit of a sharper raisin as well, actually. So yeah, the aroma that comes out of this beer, I think, is really quite nice, actually. It's got a good little bit of fruitiness to it, and I think the more that you smell of this beer, the more the fruitiness comes out of it. But again, I think this is going to be another solid beer from Möllys, actually. So yeah, take a bit of time and enjoy the aroma of this one before you get stuck into it, but we are going to have a taste of this now and see how we get on. So yeah, this one is the Möllys Brown Affi Sugar, a 10% Imperial Brown Ale from Möllys Kvarterbryggeri in Eskilstuna, out to the west of Stockholm, here in Sweden. So yeah, very curious about this. An Imperial Brown Ale with coffee and maple syrup added to it. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skål. Right, I'm just going to say, damn. You know, Rikard from Över at Glas, he was telling me that I was going to enjoy this one. The man was not wrong. The man was not wrong. This is another beautiful beer from Möllys Kvarterbryggeri. You know, in some ways I'm in two minds about this, because this is a very nice beer. And I do think it's a shame that they still brew on such a small scale, in fairness. But I do wonder, you know, if Daniel was to kind of scale up a little bit, I do wonder if the beers might lose a little bit of the kind of rawness that they have. So I think this brewery is one of these like little gems that I hope kind of stays. I hope it does kind of continue to prosper, if you like, but I do hope they stay little in this sense, because I think the beers might just lose a little bit of that rawness if they were to brew them on the bigger scale. But this is a lovely brownie once again. The thing that's striking me about this straight away is the level of dryness you get out of it the further that you go into the aftertaste. So we'll see if that kind of plays out the more we drink of it. But yeah, this has got a lovely mouthfeel as well. I can see why they mentioned slickness on the can here. But yeah, that's an awesome beer. This could be the best one I've tried from them so far, come to think of it. Bless me. Yeah, better not be the Rona. Pretty sure it's not though. But yeah, this one, just a beautiful beer. So where to start with this? I mean, straight away with this beer, the first thing you're going to notice on the first sip is you get a good bit of dryness in the very centre of your palate. You get a really very roasty, toasty kind of dryness coming out of this beer. But yeah, the backbone of the beer, it's really interesting. yeah, it's one of these beers, it starts off when you take this one in, it's very, 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 very sweet. There's a lot of kind of molasses, brown sugars in there, and you can feel those in the centre of your palate, but I think the maple syrup that's in here just sort of brightens those up a little bit, so you've got some real layers of brown sugar in this beer, which I think is very, very nice. So yeah, on the so in the middle of your palate you can really feel that nice you feel that kind of nice toasty, well-fired bread crust quality. That just blankets the middle of your palate there, but I think in the very centre of your tongue it does dry out quite a lot, but you can feel a nice kind of smooth brown bready quality developing on top of that, almost like a little bit of a German rye bread, and then you've got a really nice kind of slick you've really got a very nice slick brown sugary quality sitting on top of that. But the thing that really strikes me about this beer is that in the very, very dead centre of your palate there's this almost just a circle of a really toasty, well-fired dryness coming out of the beer, and it's so unusual that there's just this circle, this small circle of a really dry part in the middle of the palate. It's really, really very strange, but I like how it goes together. But yeah, the layers in this beer are really interesting. Dead centre of your palate, really toasty, well-fired sort of thing. As you move further out from that, you start to get the well-fired bread crusty notes, but on top of that you've got some nice brown bread smoothing it out. As I say, the layer above that is that slick kind of brown sugary sort of thing, and you can feel that it's a mix of that, of a sort of treacly molasses, you know, highly caramelised brown sugar, but you've also got the maple syrup in there just brightening it up a little bit. So that's the middle third of your palate, and it does in fairness extend back a little bit towards the back third of your palate. But let's focus on the back third now. So for me, the back third of the palate definitely has a bit more of a roasty toasty kind of edge to it. So in the back third of your palate, definitely a roasty toasty base, but on top of that you can feel that it just gets a little bit more kind of raw, if you like. You've got a bit of the you've got more of the coffee notes coming out of this beer, which is great. So yeah, the coffee that comes out of this beer I think is really nice, and it's just really, really nice and very, very smooth actually. So you can really feel the dryness in the back of the beer really builds up the further that you go into the aftertaste with this one. I mean, it comes across very it comes across as a very, very well fired roast actually. If you like, you've almost on that borderline between middle third of your tongue and back third of your tongue. There's a real just dryness, like a black malty almost dryness to it, but then and then from there the graininess, the sort of grainy roasty well firedness, that forms the backbone of that back third of your palate. Then it does smoothen out a little bit, and then on top of all of that you've got that smooth kind of coffee coming out of the beer. The coffee for me does have a good little bit of earthiness. There's a wee bit of aromaticity coming out of it, and even a little bit of a citrusy character. So the coffee for me comes across quite differently in the flavour than I was expecting in the aroma. I thought it was going to be more of a red fruity coffee and a little bit more smooth, but it really has a bit of brightness and aromaticity to it, which is interesting. But this beer's got it really has a contrast. Middle third of your palate is lovely and sweet, and the back third of your palate is really roasty and toasty, and the coffee just kind of seeps on top of that and spreads into the middle third of your palate a little bit. So that's really interesting. You will notice if you go to the front corners of your palate then diagonally back, you will notice a few kind of woody elements pushing their way out of the beer. If you go to the dead centre of your palate and then go forward, you've got a wee bit of you do have a little bit of a kind of nutty quality pushes its way out of this one too, which I think is very interesting. Yeah, it's a really, really nice beer, this one. It's got real contrast to it. Roasty toasty on one side, smooth on the other, and then you've got that real slick kind of brown sugary note to it, but definitely in the middle of your palate you can feel that drying out the further you go into the aftertaste. But as I say, the beer gets a massive thumbs up from me. I really like this one. This is definitely one of the drier and more roasty toasty brown ales that I've come across in recent times. But yeah, onto the hoppy side of things then. Back corners of the palate you've got a nice big roasty earthiness to the beer. The earthiness does spread forward quite a little bit actually, but as you reach the front corners of the palate you've got a nice little touch of floral aromaticity. One thing I would say about this beer is that I'm probably drinking it quite fresh. You probably could, at 10%, you could probably let this beer mellow out a little bit more, but you know, when it's an Imperial coffee brown stout, I just wanted to try it. I really did. You know, I love these big Imperial coffee brown ales. You know, these anything Imperial brown ale, I really enjoy. So I was too curious about this one to sit and age it for a bit. I wanted to see what this beer was all about, and it's certainly not disappointed. It's quite quirky and quite different from what I would have expected, but it's not disappointed at all. And you know, that doesn't surprise me when we're talking about this brewery. So on the front third of your palate, then, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So when you take this one in, so when you take this beer in, you've got a lovely kind of oily, plummy sort of note to the beer. There's definitely a little bit of a tiny raisin sharpness in there as well, but for me it's mainly a plummy note. And if you go towards the back third of your palate, I always say that's where you get that oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters push their way out the beer. So if you go to the back, there's a nice kind of oily, juicy plum, and then as you get a wee touch of raisiny sharpness when you take it in, like I said. But as you move further and further forward, you start to get the you do get a little bit of that kind of figgy, juicy note out of it. Then as you reach the front part of that front tip of your tongue, you get the nice big, more oily black currants base in it. But then the further you go into the aftertaste, you get the slightly brighter black curranty notes in there as well. You don't get so much in the way of the kind of phenolic note that you were picking up in the aroma, but I think the overall vibe of this beer is really nice. This is a big, oily, slick beast of a thing, and I really like how this all pieces together. So again, a massive thumbs up to Möllys Kvarterbryggeri from me for this one. Really glad I got to try this actually, and I love the depth of the brown sugars as well. You will notice that in the middle of your palate, the brown sugars really brighten this beer up and sort of balance out the kind of roasty, toasty side of it. So yeah, this is just another awesome beer, but I'm not surprised at this stage from this brewery. Definitely glad that I picked up one of these in the Locals Muscadet. So yeah, I think we can leave the flavour profile section at that for this one. I do wonder if this one has a little bit of Northern Brewer in it from Germany. It's quite a popular Doppelbock hop, and there's something about the way the fruits are coming out in this that makes me wonder if it's Northern Brewer that's in this beer. So yeah, I think for my next video from these guys, it needs to either be a lager or some kind of regular IPA. I think that's where we need to go with Möllys Kvarterbryggeri next. But again, if they produce a big beer like this, like a big coffee stout or something, that's what we'll be having. I love these guys are very good when it comes to the slightly bigger, higher alcohol dark beers. That's probably where they shine the most, to be honest with you. But then again, I need to try a few more lighter beers from them, so take that statement with a pinch of salt. But yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel then, to round this one off, yeah, I would say that this beer is pretty it's pretty full-bodied. I would say it's at the bottom end of full-bodied. The carbonation is very smooth. As the can tells you, it's got a very slick mouthfeel at the same time, but it's lovely and big and oily, big oily slickness that the beer has. So yeah, I really like how that all pieces together in this one. Yeah, on the bitterness side of things, I wouldn't be surprised if this beer is a big like 80 IBUs, possibly even more than that, both from the coffee and from the hoppy side of things. You get a big earthiness out of this beer, and also that big kind of yeah, and also that big kind of roasty toasty thing from the grains and from the coffee as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if this was a big 80 IBU beer. But the malt base, in addition to that, in addition to the kind of drier side of it, it's also got a nice bit of smoothness to it, a bit of a kind of brown bready sort of thing. Also some really nice kind of brown sugars, very thick and very slick, to be honest with you. There's a lot of stuff kind of mixing in with that one. I really like how that how all of that kind of malty side of the beer goes together. The undertones, the nuts and the wood are very interesting in this as well. But yeah, the fruity side of the beer is great. I really like that. When you take it in, you get a little bit more kind of sharpness out of it, but then you start to get the more juicy elements of the fruit coming out a little bit later on. But I think it's safe to say this is just a beautifully done, a beautiful beer, and a beautifully executed Imperial Brown from from Möllys Kvarterbryggeri. So if you get the chance to try this one, I highly, highly recommend that you do. I've certainly enjoyed it, so yeah. 100% on the way, all the way rather. And I'm just surprised that there's not a little bit more of a kind of phenolic type thing out of this, because you really could pick up a little bit of that sort of medicinal phenolic type thing that you might expect of a double or sometimes a quadrupel. You did pick up a little bit of that in the aroma, I think, with this one. But yeah, interesting stuff. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this review then. This was an awesome Imperial brown ale, and the coffee and the maple syrup just added even more kind of depth to it, which was really quite interesting. So yeah, let's leave it there. So yeah, this one was the brown Affi sugar, coming in at 10% ABV, an Imperial brown ale with coffee and maple syrup added to the brew from Möllys Kvarterbryggeri, pardon me, in Eskilstuna, out to the west of Stockholm. Been a pleasure to review this one for you. Nice to give Rikard at Över at Glas a shout out, and nice to review one of his local beers as well. But this one was pretty damn awesome, and do make sure you check out this beer if you get the chance through your local Systembolaget. So yeah, let's leave it there. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Möllys Kvarterbryggeri as well. Do give me some other recommendations of Imperial brown ales. I would love to review more of these, but in the meantime, make sure you check out this one if you get the chance. Stay safe, and yeah, go and check out Eskilstuna if you have the chance, somewhere that I need to go quite soon, as I said. But yeah, thanks again for watching. Check out my social media, check out Möllys Kvarterbryggeri in Eskilstuna. We will return to these guys very, very soon. This one was the brown Affi, sugar, a 10% Imperial brown ale with coffee and maple syrup added to the brew. Awesome beer, and one that you really just need to try for yourself. Slàinte, skål, cheers.